This week I've been showing you the process I use to make sourdough einkorn bread because I figured out a way to make it easier to do and also less expensive than the way that I learned it. So if you want to see more of this content, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm Susan Gleaton, a registered dietitian, and when people come to me for digestive problems or autoimmune or whatever, I try to look for the root cause of why that problem happened in the first place so that as symptoms improve and they get better, it doesn't all just come back to begin with. So the last step, I let the loaf rise in the oven and then I baked it at 450 degrees for 50 minutes. But that was actually, I think, a little too long. I went over what I usually do, which is 450 degrees for 45 minutes. But I went over because it was a little bit larger of a loaf. I don't think it needed it. So when I took it out, I think it was a little more done than I like, which means the bottom of it may be tough. So once you bake your bread, you set your timer, you take it out, open the lid of the Dutch oven, have a toothpick ready so you can stick it in there and make sure it's ready, that the toothpick doesn't come out moist or that there's crumbs on it. So once you've determined that your loaf is done, you want to put it on some type of rack. Get it out, like that's why you have this parchment paper, so you can get it out of the Dutch oven and put it on a rack to cool just as quickly as possible. I found that the longer I keep it in the pan, then the more likely that the bottom of my loaf is tough. And that would be the biggest problem I have with the loaf. And so what I wanted to do now was just see how the loaf turned out, and then I'm going to show you the way I figured out to cut the loaf, because that did take me a while to figure out. So I'll just remove the paper. The loaf is a little warm, but I'm running out of daylight, so I'm going to go ahead and just at least show you how to cut it. It looks pretty good. The bottom is not too awfully tough. The sides don't feel too tough. So let's just get into it and see how it turned out. So I found the best knife to use is actually a short little serrated knife that came with a knife set I had. It's not all that long, but it's tough, and so it's short and does a good job for me. So the way I cut a loaf like this is I will first just cut it in half. And you don't actually have to cut all the way through when you cut it in half, because if you get that cut pretty much through, then you can just like crack it and it comes apart. All right, so there's half of it and here's half. And so you can see it looks like a good texture. There's no air holes, not much of a problem with that with sourdough anyway. At least not whole grain einkorn / rye sourdough. It's got much less gluten, so it is not going to rise the same as like a refined wheat sourdough bread would. Those are the beautiful loaves that you see on the internet. This is more nutritious, but it's not going to rise as much. It's much more dense. So then once I get it in half, then I have a flat surface, so I can just put it down, and then it's real easy to just slice off little pieces. And so the ends of it are good for just eating with butter, real butter. So actually you would not believe how good for you true sourdough bread and real butter are for your gut microbes. It's actually really good food for the good bacteria in your gut. So anyway, so slice off the end, and then I'm not going to slice a lot because it's still a little bit warm. But from this point, I just start making slices as thick or as thin as I like. And it's tearing up a little bit, but that's because it's warm. So now you see what a slice turns out like. As I get to the top of the bread, of course, they're going to be longer. and they turn out, you know, different lengths and all that. But once it's all sliced, I just kind of stack them up. And I put them in like a gallon-sized storage bag, but if you don't want to use plastic, then you could use something glass or put it in wax paper or something like that. We did add vitamin C this time. I don't always. So it should stay fresh a little longer than if I didn't. But I generally go ahead and refrigerate my bread. Maybe not the day I make it or the day after, but that following day I'm going to go ahead and refrigerate it because I do not want my bread to start molding or anything like that. So studies have shown that bread does get stale faster if you refrigerate it versus freezing it. So another option would be once you slice your bread and it is totally cool or cooled down, you could put it in a bag or some type of container and freeze portions of it, and then just pull out the part that you want to thaw each day, or pull off a slice, or however much you want each day. So that is it. That is the process of making the bread. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments so that I can answer them.